Hello again. Mounting reports of police brutality are not a sign of increased police violence. That's the view outlined by a key White House spokesman.
I don't think that anybody is in a position to suggest that these incidents that are getting national attention necessarily represent a spike in more violent police activity. I think it represents a greater awareness and heightened sensitivity in the news media and among people across the country about incidents like this.
Well, it's not just media coverage that's spurred public outrage over police abuses. Various videos have appeared online on the internet. Let me warn you, some of the pictures coming up are graphic, especially in these next two. Of course, they're not the only examples of US police officers using excessive force. Let's take you through a couple of incidents in the first few months of this year alone. In January, a motorist was severely beaten and wrestled to the ground during a routine check. Walter Scott, an unarmed black man, was shot in the back in California, also during a traffic check. In the same state, police beat up and tasered a man while he was already on the ground. The public's outrage was also fueled by the death of Freddie Gray, too, while he was in custody. And police in the US are embroiled in another controversy too we can tell you about. The majority of the police force in a small town in Missouri have resigned en masse. They quit after the election of its first black mayor. Missouri became the focus point of a racial protest, of course, following the killing of black teenager Michael Brown by a police officer last year. Justice campaigner Dante Barry told us these resignations now are a result of protests against police brutality.
The fact that 80% of this police department quit in response to the election of a black woman mayor just demonstrates the power of organizing that has happened since August 9th, since Michael Brown's death, and the protests that continue to make waves across the country. It implicitly reveals the challenge that some might have currently with the change that people are filtering when it comes to holding police accountable to the community that they're supposedly protecting and serving.
Well, in the city of Ferguson, where Michael Brown was killed, a memorial in his honour has been vandalised. That's prompted a furious reaction on social media. One person describing the people who destroyed it as cowards, another called it a disgusting act. And there were more comments saying that if a tree was planted for every black man killed, there'd be a forest. Dante Barry again says it's yet another sign of the racial tension that's gripping America.
This is just another attempt to desecrate Michael Brown's memorial. It's a shame whether or not black folks can live or be alive or be dead, and we're still treated like this. We're treated without any form of dignity or justice or fairness. And this is a part of a larger cultural issue when it comes to anti-blackness in communities all across the country, where black people are seen as criminal, delinquent, and not even capable of being human. And nonetheless, we're not even capable of being remembered when it comes to a memorial being desecrated.
Yet another ousted Egyptian president has been sentenced to jail. Former President Mohamed Morsi has been given 20 years in prison for ordering the torture and detention of protesters. He was also the leader of the now outlawed Muslim Brotherhood group. Earlier, his predecessor, Hosni Mubarak, spent time in jail after having been found guilty of embezzlement. Belle True has the details on this latest case.
Supporters of Mohamed Morsi were on tenterhooks today as they waited to find out if he did indeed face the gallows. The charges against him, citing to kill protesters for a 2012 clash here in Cairo outside the presidential palace, are severe. He could have been given the death penalty, but surprisingly he wasn't. He was given just 20 years in jail. The judge, who was regarded as being relatively lenient by supporters of the government, who of course are against Mohamed Morsi, he did rule that Mohamed Morsi and his fellow Muslim Brotherhood leaders were not guilty of murder charges. Instead, they had egged on some Mohamed Morsi supporters to be violent towards anti-government protesters, but not to actually commit murder. Mohamed Morsi is facing 2 other trials for espionage, which are also carry the death penalty. He's also being charged with a prison break in 2011. So there's some serious trials that he's also facing, but yet this judge decided not to send him to the gallows. It could be because there is still significant support for Mohamed Morsi here in Egypt and abroad, and perhaps perhaps the authorities don't want to risk seeing further violence across the country if they do let him hang. But for the moment, Mohamed Morsi isn't going anywhere. Like I said, he's got 2 more trials against him. They are serious charges, so we'll have to see how they turn out.
Well, let's take a closer look at the former Egyptian leader for a minute. Mohamed Morsi was the country's first elected president, though his rule lasted just 1 year. In July 2013, he was ousted by the military following mass anti-government protests. Fast forward to November of the same year. He stood trial then. The charges included inciting supporters to murder opposition members and ordering the torture and detention of dissidents. On Monday, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison, acquitted of inciting murder, but guilty of ordering torture. Next, another trial underway to tell you about, this time in Germany. A 93-year-old former Auschwitz guard has appeared in court. Oscar Groening is charged with being an accessory to around 300,000 deaths at that concentration camp. He's known as the bookkeeper of Auschwitz and was in charge of counting the money confiscated from new prisoners. Groening's admitted to, quote, moral guilt and described his role at the death camp, but he denies directly participating in genocide. Bad weather here, a storm lashing Australia's southeast. It's destroyed homes and left dozens stranded by floods. Officials say the severe weather might be the cause of 3 deaths so far too. Since Monday, more than 30 centimetres of rain's fallen in some areas, with winds of more than 100 kilometres an hour. Forecasters say conditions could worsen too in the coming days. We'll keep you posted. Don't forget all our news as well at rt.com. Now on